None of the video content in my Bambaataa Files playlist insinuate that I support child predator behavior, nor does it insinuate that any of the people, characters, or artists that I cover and talk about and interview stand with preying on children. It is a fact in 2016 he was accused, Bambaataa, he was accused of previously being a child predator. Whether he is successfully sued or prosecuted, I don't support child predators in any sense. However, I believe that hip-hop should not suffer because of the reputation of a few individuals. Let's go. I had a bunch of fun doing this video, researching it, just putting together the slides. I had a bunch of fun. I learned a bunch of things that I had no idea about. I'm further convinced that hip-hop was not the product of one race alone. However, the majority of the energy might have come from the Pan-African people. But as we will see in this video, it was not the sole effort of Pan-African people. I just want to say that. Fab Five Freddy. Why not start with Fab Five Freddy? Oh, we're going to see. He was the bridge, in my opinion, and the main component of why hip-hop got the exposure that it got. Was that all he did? Well, I think inadvertently, Fab Five Freddy introduced African Bambaataa to a lifestyle that I don't know if African Bambaataa was ready for. Right? And this was probably all innocent, nonetheless, what I'm saying. We have to get into this video for you to truly understand what I mean. So, without further ado, let's just get into this bad boy. Alright. Hip-hop meets the rockers and hipsters. But how? But how? Huh? What is this marriage between these gypsies, these rock and punk gypsies, and these street magicians and entertainers? Let's find out. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out and a rest in peace to the great K. Slay. If you look all the way to the right, this man right here, that is Mr. Dez. Yes, he was a graffiti writer before he was known as the great DJ K. Slay. This is his graffiti crew in 1982. So, as I'm doing these videos in the Bambaataa Files, I'm going to cover B-boys, I'm going to cover DJs, I'm going to cover MCs, right? I'm going to cover the fashion people. Because, like I said in my disclaimer, I may not agree with behavior that individuals do, but there's no way in the world that I'm going to punish hip-hop, and I'm not going to tell the history of hip-hop. And if that history has something to do with that person, in this case Bambaataa, then yeah, I'm going to do that. So I found a way to tie in a lot of the elements of hip-hop, since Bambaataa is, whether you like it or not, whether whoever likes it or not, even myself, since he is a forefather of hip-hop, found a way to tie that in so that we could still get education and some substance from this crazy energy that's going on right now. All right, so let's just get back into that. So that's a big shout out to DJ K Slay when he was a graffiti writer. And like I said, I am starting off with the graffiti writing right now, the graffiti writers. And that being said, the first person that I had to start off with was a gentleman by the name of Taki 183. Because it is written that he was the first famous New York graffiti artist, dating back to the 1960s. Oh yeah, I got very excited while I was researching a lot of this information, because I'm like, I had no idea who some of these people were. And if it wasn't for this energy right now, even surrounding the museum and African Bambaataa, and me coming up, given the idea from the universe to do what I'm doing with the Bambaataa files, I would never have even known a lot of these people. And there's no way in the world that we can leave out many of these people's names, just leave them out of hip hop. There's no way in the world we could do that. All right? So Taki was actually given the accolades of being the first person to have the numbers behind his name. And the three numbers represent the block that they was usually from. So, hey, 183rd, shout it out, stand up. This is Taki 183, and he was writing graffiti in the 1960s, which pissed some people off. Oh yeah. Former congressman and then at that time Mayor John Lindsay said he was going to allocate $10 million. You have to think, $10 million in the 1960s. How much was that even worth? And for him to dedicate that amount of money just to graffiti and cleaning up. So, as you know, I was born in 1977. I have no idea what was going on in New York City. But what I researched, I have to, just insinuate or assume. I have to assume that the streets were looking pretty crazy and gruesome. The walls of the subways, like, I don't know, there was a transitioning taking place that really got a lot of conservatives tipped off. They was like, heck no. Like, what is going on? I hate this graffiti stuff. Well, he may have hated it, but Henry Chalfant, white boy from PA, right? Rural town where they have steel mines and everything, and it's, if you're going to stick around, you're probably going to work at the steel mine. He came from a middle class family. I would say affluent a little bit, because they did have a chauffeur. He ended up going to California after high school. He takes off. He goes out there to Stanford University, and he studies Greek and sculpting. Now, as he's living life, he finds his wife, his actress wife. They're kind of like moving freely all over the globe. They're traveling to Europe so he can study sculpting some more out there. He's a true artist, you understand? But something happens when he hits New York. Like, he's traveling all over, and then he comes to New York in the 60s. And he's like, what? Like, what is this? Like, this art that he's seeing all over the trains, the colors, it's like everywhere. He's like, what? And he decides to move back to New York. Well, moved to New York in 1973. And from 76 to 79, he's just out there shooting on the trains and building relationships. And one of the people that he meets as he's out there shooting, and mainly on the weekends. He's out there shooting, he has a still camera, and he meets another guy who's out there with his still camera, and he's shooting, right? Artist by the name of Nako, a.k.a. Dondi. Now, Dondi now, to our true graffiti historians or hip-hop historians, they really know, like, this name Dondi is in the pantheon of the gods of graffiti. Like it's a name that, if you're in this culture, is reverenced. Just his luck, your boy meets with him. Yeah. Dondi tells him, yo, come by the bench. Now, benching was this thing where writers would meet casually, right? It was kind of like the corners of the 80s and the 90s. But it was the benches. It was the parks. Those parks drew in different people. It was just about an energy. It wasn't really about, like, it had nothing to do if you were tough. None of those things, right? Because there were different cultures, people from different races. There was homeless people there, poor people, but then there was affluent people there, and people that came from Jewish households with money. Like, everyone was there. If you was there with the energy, you're just there, right? And he meets Dondi. Dondi says, yo, come by the benches. And then what Dondi does is he kind of like introduces him to other people, other artists, right? So he's in the fold now, Henry, just like that, following your dream. This is such an inspiration to, like, whoever. Just kind of like follow your heart sometimes, because there's no right or wrong answer. It's just like, yo, just do it. Just, if it's in your heart, like, do it. Positive things, though, right? Let's be logical. And as he's taking these pictures, whereas an artist or a younger artist that really admire the style of someone else, where they're only able to see these other people's work on moving trains really fast, now what Chalfant has done is take these pictures and allows younger artists coming up to be able to, like, really admire the style. So a graffiti artist like Scheme, who's younger than Dondi, is now able to really look at Dondi's work and say, oh, okay, cool. And then borrow inspiration and take his artwork to another level. Shout out to Scheme, by the way. And in 1980, after covering these trains and all these art pieces and just following around these graffiti artists for 3 years, Chalfant decides, I'm going to do an expo, right? Now, I just want to stop everybody right here. I don't see this as culture vulturing, because this could have went any way. Henry Chalfant could have got out there, and guess what? Nothing could have happened with those photos, which tells me he just was doing what he loved to do. He's just out here shooting. No one paid him to go on the trains and shoot. So this is a white boy who's out there shooting graffiti, who happens to meet a black Italian artist from Brooklyn who brings him in the fold. We have to stop these nonsensical conversations about black people owning hip-hop. But let's continue on, because you're not going to believe me.